everyone, welcome to my seminar. The topic that I have been assigned to take is the theory of Vernon, which comes under the course Psychology of Individual Differences. As I've just mentioned, I'm dealing with the theory of Vernon in the classical theory of intelligence. Before moving on to his theory, let us know about who Philip Vernon was. Philip E. Vernon, well, his full name is Philip Ewart Vernon. He was born in Oxford, the United Kingdom, on 6th of June 1905, and he is a British, and he is famously known as a psychologist and an author. And 14 books, he's the author of 14 books, and he has published approximately 200 journals. And he died when he was 82 on 28 July 1987. Now let us look at some of his works. Well, these are some of his major works. The first work written in 1940, that is The Measurement of Abilities. Then comes The Structure of Human Abilities, which is in 1950. Intelligence and Cultural Environment in 1969. Intelligence, Heredity and Environment in 1979. And The Psychology and Education of Gifted Children in 1977. These are some of his prominent works. Well, there are many. As I mentioned, he's written 14 books, so there are more. And to say more about him, he has focused more on race, intelligence, about gifted children, etc. And that is reflected in his works too. Now let us look into the theory of Vernon. Well, Vernon's theory of intelligence is also known as hierarchical theory of Vernon. Well, this theory was proposed by Vernon in the year 1964, and he always preferred using a research tool, that is factor analysis. Well, if you have learned in research, it is quite clear that factor analysis is something that condenses or consolidates so many variables into a few variables, which makes the research much easier. So he prefers to use this particular research tool. And he has presented his hierarchy group factor theory of the structure of human intellectual abilities in his book, The Structure of Human Abilities. This is quite important. The book that he has written in 1950, The Structure of Human Abilities, has this hierarchical group factor theory, which he talks about as Vernon's hierarchical theory. Let us look more into it. Well, Vernon has postulated that the abilities constituting intelligence are arranged in a series of levels ranging from general to specific. That is, he has put his theory in a hierarchical order. So in his hierarchy, the first or the foremost level is a general level. Then comes the next levels, and the bottom level is the specific level. So that is what he has said. He has tried to put in the abilities constituting intelligence, and he has arranged it in a series of levels or in a hierarchical level that is ranging from general to specific. Now this theory places the factors, the intelligence, into three, that is general intelligence, the major factors constituting it, the abilities, and then comes the specific skills. So the first and the foremost or the highest level is general level, general intelligence, then comes major factors, we'll look more into it, then comes the specific skills. This is a rough diagram of how a hierarchical model of Vernon looks like. In this, the first and the foremost column is where I've written G. G refers to general factors. Okay. Then comes the second level. We'll discuss or we'll go into it. After that, we are jumping on to the bottom level, the last level, that is S, or the specific factors. So I hope it is clear. Now, if you can just see this particular picture that I've made, this looks like an inverted tree. Okay. Inverted tree, not the tree, the normal tree, but the inverted one, where there's a root, that is the general factors, then comes the stem, the branches, again the branches are again being spread. So this is just like an inverted tree where general factors are highest level and specific factors at the lowest or bottom level. Now this theory was formulated by Vernon as a result of his influence of the theories by other writers. So example, Spearman, Thurston, etc. We've already learned about them. So these two theories have been highly influenced Vernon to come up with this particular hierarchical theory of intelligence. So Spearman's two-factor theory, that is where he talks about general intelligence and specific ability, and Thurston's group factor theory intelligence, where he talks about intelligence as not as a general factor but as independent factors or primary abilities. Now let us just look back into this particular figure to see if there are general and specific factors, and if there are group factor theory as well. So in this diagram, the first highest level is in the general factor, and the lowest to the bottom level has specific factors involved in it. And we're going to discuss now about that is seen in the middle, that is V, ED, K, M. So I'll tell you what it is now. So I hope this is clear. This particular theory is a combination of both Spearman's two-factor theory as well as Thurston's group factor theory. Now, if you want to know more about Spearman's two-factor theory, I think the seminar is being taken by Amal K. Bevichan, and Thurston's group factor theory is being taken by Amberisa. So go have a look at it to know more about it. Fine. Over to the topic. Because Vernon's theory accounted for a general factor and group factors, it was seen as a reconciliation between Spearman's two-factor theory, which did not have group factors but only general factors and specific factors, and Thurston's multiple factor theory, which did not have a general factor. So I hope this is clear. So Vernon's theory was accounted for, it has to have both group factors as well as general factor. So he was influenced by Spearman's two-factor theory, where there's general factor as well as specific factor, and also Thurston's theory where there are multiple factors. So this is the reason why he ended up having a hierarchical theory, and he was highly influenced by Spearman and Thurston. Now this is a small diagram to make the things easier. So this is the shortened version of it. Spearman's two-factor theory and Thurston's group or multiple factor theory has given rise to what we call the Vernon's hierarchical theory of intelligence. Now, in his theory, his hierarchical theory, he talks about a verbal perceptual model. Now, this model is where we are talking about what is in the middle, excluding the general as well as the specific factors. What is remaining is what is this verbal perceptual model. Let us look more into it. Now the general factor, the G factor, was further divided into two orthogonal group factors, that is something that is mutually interdependent. This is also known as major factors. So broadly there are two factors. One is verbal educational factor. That is what I have shown, or I had written in the picture or the diagram as VED. V refers to verbal and ED is educational factor. Then comes a perceptual or perceptual mechanical factor, where it is represented as KM. Well, here K refers to kinesthetic and M refers to mechanical. So that is the meaning. Now I'm going back to the first one, that is verbal educational factor, represented as VED. VED. So verbal educational factor refers to the verbal as well as the educational abilities, and usually this is what we acquire from our school. During our school life we acquire both verbal fluency or educational abilities, different aspects. So these are all coming under major heads, which has minor heads as well. Then comes the perceptual or mechanical factor, that is kinesthetic or kinesthetic mechanical. So it includes spatial, practical and mechanical abilities. So three abilities, three and more. Okay, there are other minor factors too, which is acquired from skills forming in non-school time. This is not acquired during our school time, but outside school, or maybe in our house, somewhere outside school. Okay, so that is it. So verbal education is something that you acquire from school through learning and practice. The perceptual mechanical factor is something that we learn as a skill, not from school, maybe outside school. Then we are coming on to the last part, that is the specific factors. Now, as I said, the first is the general factor. General intelligence is something that we require, or something that you acquire during our birth. That is something that is inborn within every individual. Now, specific factors are something that we develop. So it varies from person to person. So here the specific factors include creative abilities, verbal fluency, numerical factors. Now, creative abilities in terms of the first verbal educational factor. So as I said, verbal educational factor has a minor factor, that is verbal, and also the educational abilities. So in it comes the more specific factor. Now we are being more specific to what are the skills that we acquire. So the first skill is creative abilities. We become creative, we acquire or develop the skill of being creative. Then we also have verbal fluency, that is through practice. Then numerical factors, regarding to or related to mathematics, etc. Then the second was perceptual mechanical factor, or kinesthetic and mechanical. So there the spatial factors, as it is already mentioned, factors relating to space. Space in the sense the space you occupy, everything related to space. Every object, every individual requires a certain space. So that is related to space. Then psychomotor, based on what we do, based on the movement. Then mechanical factors as well. So these are the specific factors. Now to conclude, this theory was concluded by Vernon, and after this research he said that approximately 60% of the variance in human intellectual ability is attributable to genetic contribution. So 60% of it is genetic in nature, that is something that we acquire by birth, something that is inborn, that is innate in us. So these 60% of the abilities are innate, the others are what we acquire, which are more specific in nature. Vernon's theory is supported by numerous studies finding positive intercorrelations among different tests. So this theory has been supported by numerous studies, and they found that there is a positive intercorrelation among the tests that is being conducted. So to conclude, or to make it easy and short, it is to be said that Vernon has intelligently picked up the best of the theories, and then he has put them together to form this hierarchical theory. So a few points for you to note. Let us quickly revise. As I said, this theory is known as hierarchical theory, and this was proposed in the year 1964. And about this theory has mentioned, or he had talked about this particular theory in his book, The Structure of Human Abilities, which was written in 1950. Now, according to this theory, there is a hierarchy that follows, the highest level being the general intelligence, the general factor. Then comes the major factors, that is verbal educational as well as kinesthetic and mechanical factors. Then comes the specific factors at the bottom level. This is a rough diagram of how a hierarchical model of Vernon looks like. Now this theory comprises of, or it's a combination of two theories, that is Spearman's two-factor theory, where he talks about general intelligence and specific ability, and then Thurston's group factor theory, where he talks about independent factors or primary abilities by not giving importance to the general factors. Then he has also mentioned it using a model named verbal perceptual model, where he talks about verbal educational factor as well as perceptual mechanical factor. Then comes the specific factor at the bottom level, where you talk about the specific skills every individual has. So this is it about the seminar. Thank you so much. Have a great day.